Hi folks, I just wanted to preface this part 2, which is going to be only about the neck work in some detail. And for those who have asked that they'd like to see more work, well, you're going to see a little bit more work. For those that have told me in the past where I've shown more work that it's like watching paint dry, for those folks, this is going to be like watching paint dry. And if you have the experience, you can just skip it. For those folks who are novices buying inexpensive guitars and you want to understand how you can easily fix, the frets and the sharp edges and things like that without too much cost to yourself or difficulty doing it yourself, you can watch this part too. I'm hand holding my camera. I've gotten the strings off and I just wanted to show you the neck. I'm used to Fenders and Fender style guitars. I've never had a Les Paul that had a bolt-on neck before, but it's a very, very peculiar, very, very square system. There was no shim in the neck. What I found was that the holes here in the body need to be opened a little bit. They were drilled the same diameter as the ones here in the heel, and they're biting in here as well, and they should not, so they'll have to be opened up a little bit before I end up putting the neck back on. The good news with the screws is that they were all the same length. Sometimes when we get these Chinese guitars, not all the screws are the same length, and these were long enough to go through. And there was no shim. What I can discern here, if I don't want to make you too dizzy, is that the body thickness here is thicker than the body thickness here. And that's what made it look like it was a door wedge. And it's because it's sloped, it's thinner here and then it is up there. So, and because this is gone on the other side, there's the mystery. Down here on the bridge, the top post is not loose. The other one is a little bit shaky in the threads. I'll probably put some plumber's tape on that to stop it from moving around. And these are okay. I will be putting these knobs, chrome knobs. I have had some in my supply, so I will be putting those on, and I bought some new 500K pots in order to work on the guitar. I'm going to do the electrics later, and the first thing I'm going to do is look at taking the sharpness off the frets, cleaning them up, cleaning up the fretboard itself, and when that's done, I'll get onto the electrics part, where I'll tell you about my crazy idea. Okay, so I'm at the neck. First thing I'm going to do is try to get the sharp edges off. I often use sandpaper, but sometimes I'll pick up, these little sponge with the abrasive on both sides. This one feels like about a 400 to a 600. I don't really remember what it was. I just kind of like got it and threw it in my bag. And pick these up at the dollar store for next to nothing. So all I got to do basically is just kind of run it along the edges. Now that's going to make a little bit of a mark on the wood as well, but that's okay because it's going to soften up and roll over the edge, which will be just fine. And as you're doing it, you'll be able to see, I don't know if you can see it in there, but probably not in this light, but the edges of the frets lighten up and shine up. Nah, can't see it in that light, but they start to shine up compared to what they were because the frets themselves are a little bit dull. Not as bad as some guitars I've gotten. Oh, note, the nut is 43 millimeters wide. It's very well done, and the cut is really nice. And it's so hard, it's either a special kind of man-made product, it could be a tusk, it could be bone, but I'm thinking it's more of a non-bone type of nut, but unless I was to cut on it and see what kind of dust I get from it, I couldn't really be sure. So I just kind of touch these ends down here, and wow, it's such a difference. Just and that's all the market made right here on the sponge sandpaper. Just gently at the angle of 45 degrees to go with the ends of the frets. Now that'll probably at some point, you know, wear down the sponge, but that's what they're made for. Okay, so that's having a help, but not enough yet. There's still places. I've got some on the end here. Some of these frets are a little sharper than others. So I thought I'd start with the sponge and see where it goes before I'd have to do maybe a more aggressive sandpaper. Oh, this side is like little knives along there. You hear, I don't know if you can hear how rough that is, but it's really rough in the beginning. And then it starts to make a much softer sound as the edges get better. Right, so they're getting better in that direction. Let me just go in the opposite direction. Okay, it is improving significantly. Not that you'd ever be able to play up there anyway, but it's just to, you know, to be consistent. And the frets are closer there, so they're easier to do when they're closer together like that. More bang for your buck. Wow, that's really nice. And a little bit more this way. Cool. Alright, let me go back down on this side. Woo! Some are terrific and some still need a little touch up, like the first ones over here. That one is really obstinate. Oh, it's getting better. The frets won't be very hard on these inexpensive guitars. And the frets here are the tiny ones. They're not very high either. I did do some playing with it between part one and this part, just to fiddle with it a little bit before I took it apart, to see what I could get it to sound like with my amplifier in different settings. Oh, we are getting there. But I'm working on another song as well. I'm trying to get ready to record. Okay, the top is starting to be really nice, and I think just a couple more swipes over here. See if I get some sponge right there. See, sometimes that's all it takes, is something just simple like that. For people who buy these inexpensive guitars for beginners and they're sharp and they cut them, you can do this little bit of work on them to make them more playable without trying to find somebody who's a specialist. That's what YouTube University's for. Okay, that is very nice on that side. I just need to finish up this side because yes, going back that way, I do have a problem with a few of them. So, like I said, it feels harsh in the beginning. You can hear the noise, you can feel the noise and the vibration. And using a sponge like this one is good because it'll get down in between as you push down lightly, but it won't be like your fingers riding in and out of the ends of the frets. It'll be more consistent and just slow and easy wins the day. You can't undo mistakes most of the time. So do and check, do and check. Now if this was a maple fretboard as well, it would show the markings a little bit more, and at that point you can decide whether you want it to go with the file and do each and every corner of them, which here would be my second step if I couldn't get exactly what I'm looking for with the sanding sponge. So when it starts to sound smoother, that's when you're getting what you want. Okay, so number 4 is being problematic. 5, 6, 7, 8, They're a little bit worse that way. We try with my other hand, just at an angle. And just hold it up a little bit so that it's kind of like this, to try to get it in there, to get that edge. Okay. It's starting to make the sound I like to hear. Yes. Very good. And of course, the most desired results with the least amount of effort and work is good. Wow, what a difference. The little razor blades are virtually gone. I just have a little feeling every so often. And while I'm here, I'm just going to give a little bit of an extra roll instead of having to come back later. Now this one, with the thumb over the top, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a cut there. So the top with the thumb, and down here, right as it sits in this part of your hand, you'll feel those edges when you're trying to reach the frets. Okay. And since this is flat, I can go across the top of the frets to get some of the grime off. Now if you don't want to do this, that's okay. I'm just going across it as it would when they're doing a final leveling, and that'll take off a lot of the stuff on them prior to the next step of cleaning them as well. Okay, I think that'll do. Wow, beautiful. I tightened up the screws on the buttons, and they feel really good now. These all needed just a touch with a 10mm nut wrench socket. So now I'm going to get my wet rag, and the first thing I'm going to do is wipe it down, and then I'm going to see about some steel wooling on the frets just to take some of the sanding scratches out of them. They'll feel, since I did this lengthways, they're going to feel a little scratchy. Now you want to put the strings back on if you want to try to bend or anything. So that's the next step. And let's give it some wiping, and you'll see how this Indian laurel reacts to a little bit of water. First, before I go to my next level, which is usually NAFTA. Now, since this hasn't really been played at all up to this point, there's not a lot of finger grease and stuff. There's a little bit of discoloration coming off on the rag from this Indian laurel, which means that there's some kind of a stain that was put in it to try to darken it up. I actually have some stuff that can do that. Alright, so I need to get my shields, which are up here. Which will fit over my frets, just so I can, that one's wider, that one's wide, these are wider. Wow, those frets are really tiny. They're even smaller than my narrowest shields. Alright, I'm gonna pull some steel wool out and just give that a little bit of a brush across there. So this is 0000 steel wool. Now this puts little bits of steel wool everywhere when you use it. Okay, so this brings back up the shine. Oh, let's see. Hard to see in the light on the camera, but this brings back up the shine after the Scotch-Brite has taken out a lot of the sand paper scratches. Okay, so that turned out pretty good. I kind of like the kind of shine that I got with the steel wool. They're very smooth. And the next step will be to use my auto sol, which I think I have handy. So this is the polishing cream that I typically use, is auto sol. Many people use different things, as long as it's a very fine metal polish. Meguiar's aluminum polish, aluminum mag wheel polish, whatever you can find that's very, very light abrasive in it. Use some of that. Usually with just a shop towel with a little touch, and again the shield, and right across the top. It will turn it black. Let me just show you one in this video just to say we did it. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I put too much on there. So as you go over the top of the fret, it's going to polish. And here's where you got to be. See, it's turned black already, and I just touched it twice. And so just run that polish over the top of it, and then that takes away the even finer scratches from the steel wool and makes your fret absolutely glossy, and you end up with that. That happens on all the frets. The one thing I can't confirm is whether or not that happens on a stainless steel fret, because I don't have any that have stainless steel. So I'm going to let you go here as I finish this off, because it's total boredom at this point. And when I get done with that, I'll go and try to put some I'll put some lemon oil on this thing and see what happens.